You're watching the Many Modes of Meditation by Dr. Alyssa Gaul on Resonance Wellness TV, part of our Whole Life Medicine Alleviate series. Keep in the loop about future webinars and events on whole-life-medicine.com. Again, good evening to all of you, and I'm so happy you've decided to join me here tonight on the Many Modes of Meditation. And I'm pretty honored to act as your guide to what meditation is and how it can help improve your health and your life. Now, most of my free webinars have covered aspects of Alleviate, which has much more to do with looking at root causes and the need for detoxification and the identification of missing ingredients. But our lecture tonight is going to focus on points from the perspective of Align from the Whole Life Medicine model. That's the second step in health strategy at Resonance Wellness. And hopefully it'll give you a taster of what's possible as you completely up-level your health. So in Align, patients learn what needs to change to have a transformational experience of themselves. So the steps in Align include the road to awareness. So level 2 healing or Align healing requires us to recognize the pattern of what's really been created in us. So what or who is at the controls? What did we learn subconsciously that set us up for what we're experiencing? This is a really crucial tipping point into a truly different place of understanding of health. Seeing your health picture as the result of and the cause of what you hold in your body can liberate both your function and bring you to center. In Restore, we're reconnecting pathways. So we're looking at what events and wounds are in the way of our body's healing. So an inventory of energy-changing health challenges such as surgeries or injuries, dental problems, vaccinations, chronic infections, other types of physical trauma. What parts of the body are under the most stress as a result? And which areas have become less responsive and open to not normal regulation? In this step, we use bioregulatory remedies and a model of responsive homeostasis. So lots of healing can take place in this step, especially for people who are chronically ill. But in Revitalize, we're using Thrive support systems, and that really includes clean living, learning more about how we create a great life support system through diet and maintenance of problem spots, exercises that are suited to the person once things are cleaned up. And it also includes learning basic meditation, heart math therapies, Qigong or other Qi-related therapies, and breath work. So without further ado, we're going to do a little taster of some Thrive and Revive support systems. So first, let's define what meditation is. Meditation is a process through which you examine the nature of your own consciousness. So you are not just your body. You are not just your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are really just consciousness, which witnesses everything as you play your part in life. When you're aware of your consciousness through meditation, you can become much more peaceful, calm, and rejuvenated. Now, if you're on this call, chances are good that you have maybe tried Vipassana meditation and not done very well at it. So Vipassana meditation is the ultimate goal state of meditation practices. Stated or not, a lot of them will come down to this. And in this stage of Vipassana, you're supposed to achieve an empty mind, which is completely free of intruding thoughts. Now, if you're one of those who have tried this and failed, please don't take it to heart, because monks spend years trying to achieve that state. I myself remember starting in meditation in my late teens and really struggling to try to even come close to that state. And for most beginners, it's almost impossible to do. You almost immediately come up against monkey mind, which is an affectionate term for where your brain goes when you try to find silence inside. And after many years of using other meditative practices, when I tried Vipassana meditation again, I had much less trouble with it. And so I usually recommend other practices to help patients get into the space of finding that small, still voice within. Now, I am aware that my definition of meditation as examining consciousness can be a little bit difficult at first to grasp. So we're going to start a little bit more in the body by looking at some evidence for what meditation actually does in the body. In particular, we're going to take a look at how it physically changes the brain. And it's true, meditation changes the physical brain. The areas of the brain that perceive sensation are enhanced. So those that are involved in hearing, touch, breathing awareness. You'll also increase the amount of cortex. So that's the fine layer of cell bodies that are at the very surface of the brain and of the gyruses that are going through the brain. And in particular, you can increase the amount of cortex in the frontal areas, which are associated with executive function and working memory. So this area normally shrinks over time with age, but there are studies that have shown that meditators at 50 had the same cortex amount as the average 25-year-old. So very valuable for the average person of our average age. Now, similar enhancement effects can really be seen even after maybe a short 2 months of meditation training in actually 4 really key brain areas. So the primary difference is really in a particular brain area called the posterior cingulate gyrus. And what that is an area of cortex involved in the control of your mind wandering and also of self-relevance. That means the process of evaluating how relevant something is for you to pay attention to. So in particular, something like a stressor. How much attention do you have to place on a stressor? Now, many people spend a lot of time paying attention to stressors that do not exist. And in meditation, what you're actually doing is retraining this part of the cortex to pay attention to more relevant things. So things that really you do need to pay attention to in the moment and not just the full list of things that might be on your mind or in the memory of your mind and nervous system. The second area that develops is the left hippocampus. So that assists in learning, in cognition, in memory, and also in emotional regulation. So the capacity to really sit down and concentrate and be able to be at peace with oneself. The third area is what's called the temporoparietal junction. And that's really associated with perspective taking. So being able to step back and get perspective on a situation, and also empathy and compassion. And some of you may have heard about compassion practices with meditation. And that's the recognition that you actually can achieve a greater state of compassion for both yourself and others when you've improved the brain functioning here. And last but not least, there's an area of the brain stem called the pons, and that's where a lot of regulatory neurotransmitters are produced for all sorts of body functions that include regulatory processes, so control of respiration, control of involuntary actions, or the sensory rules like we were talking before about hearing and equilibrium, taste, facial sensations, touch, pain, motor roles, in your eye movement or facial expressions and chewing and swallowing, and in the secretion of saliva and tears. So the effects on brain areas can be sustained in some individuals with just between 5 and maybe 45 minutes of practice in a day. And it's probably somewhere kind of in between that. So not a particularly long time, maybe 20 minutes. So the results in studies obviously vary between individuals because it depends on how much skills you have built up. But as you can guess from the outline in whole life medicine, there's lots of areas that have an impact on how your body can respond to meditation. But clearly that potential is really worth the effort. Most of you who maybe know a little bit more about me know that my undergraduate degree is in neuroscience. And it was a very frustrating degree to take because a lot of these types of study methodologies were not available at the time, 25 years ago when I was in school. They were very expensive methodologies to evaluate brain function. And we're getting a little bit better at that now, but it is nice to see many more studies that are actually emphasizing some of the more preventive and emphasizing neuroplasticity type of studies going on. Now, one of the things that I think meditation can actually help a lot is anxiety. And evidence has really shown that the fight or flight part of the brain, which is the amygdala, it's really in the middle of the brain, is an important center that creates anxiety and fear and stress. And if you meditate, the amygdala in general gets smaller in people. In particular, we've seen it in people who are going through mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, and I'm going to talk about mindfulness in a moment. And so this change in amygdala will be correlated directly to a reduction in stress levels. So from a consciousness perspective, meditation can make one more aware of the types of circular emotional states which create internal stress without good reason in the physical world. And that awareness can help to reduce anxiety in and of itself, or it can serve as a starting point for techniques like the mental field technique, which most patients in my practice have been trained in. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out the technique sheet in the essential handouts section of wholelifemedicine.com. Now, let's talk a little bit about mindfulness, because the difference between meditation and mindfulness can be a bit confusing because they could be considered similar, but the main difference between the two is that meditation is a term that encompasses the practice of examining the nature of your own consciousness, the end result of which is improved self-regulation. So if you're going to achieve purposeful meditation, you can utilize several different approaches, one of which is mindfulness. So mindfulness in a nutshell is the act of focusing on being in the present and being aware of your surroundings in a grateful manner as often as possible. So this is actually a fairly easy way to start a meditative type practice, especially in those who are prone to monkey mind when in total silence. So you can practice mindfulness in many ways. A common starting point in mindfulness practice is to be mindful of the food that you eat when you eat it. So you just give it your full attention. You notice the smell and the taste and the texture and the temperature as you eat it. So it seems like a simple exercise, but most people do not slow down long enough to really appreciate what's going into them. And that's not the only example. I mean, there's lots of different ways to incorporate mindfulness in your day where you're changing things up. Like you can create a new pattern. So the steps of like, if this, then that messages for yourself. So for instance, if you see the office door, you're going to take a deep breath before you start your work day. Or if the phone rings, you sit up straight and take a breath and then answer. You're creating intentional actions. And every time you create an intentional action, you will strengthen these areas of your brain and also create a healthier habit. You can also try to wake up with a purpose. So as soon as you wake up, before you touch anything, you don't touch your phone, you don't touch the alarm, you take 3 long, nourishing breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth is one of the most common patterns. And just ask yourself, what's your intention for that day based on what you need to accomplish? And is there any way that you can fit in some self-care to support those goals? And then again, with food, if you don't love it, don't eat it. Take your first 3 bites mindfully and you'll experience a taste and texture and flavor and aftertaste. And are you feeling true enjoyment from this food? And if not, try something that brings you joy and savor it slowly. So much of the time, we often inhale bags of snacks this way and don't feel satisfied by it at all. Not because you're probably hungry, but because you actually didn't enjoy it the first time around and you're looking for something else to enjoy. So an easy way to do this is like people are chocolate eaters. You can put a piece of chocolate in your mouth and just let it melt and just taste all of the flavors in chocolate. So it seems like a simple practice, but at the end of the day, it is part of the inducement of this different kind of brain development. So why does this work to start improving all those regulation centers and higher functions? I think it's because most people are on autopilot most of the time. And really, that's akin more to animal behavior than what a human being is actually capable of. So in animal behavior, there's an emphasis on instinctual, repetitive behaviors. So when we give the example of eating mindfully, you can relate to that experience, right? You can eat a bag of chips without being aware that you ate the entire thing. But it turns out that not being aware of what you're experiencing inhibits optimal brain function. It's one of the things about human beings that's unique because, as far as we can tell, animals do not have that same self-reflective capacity. Not to the degree human beings do. It is really unique that human beings can stop and reflect and then communicate that internal reflection. So mindfulness is just creating space to let new information in, and it allows us to see how it relates to what we already know. So we can try this just now as you're sitting listening to me speak right now. Whatever you're doing, sitting, or even if you're doing a task as you're listening, just stop and be still for a moment. Just let yourself become aware of the surrounds around you, the feeling of the surfaces your body's coming in contact with, maybe the chair or a tabletop, the smell in your environment. Maybe you just had dinner and it's lingering in the air. Maybe the family pet is in the room with you. And, usually if you catch their eye, you feel the connection between yourself and your pet. Even if your eyes are closed, you can often feel that. Just focus on the mindful awareness of this moment. And simple as it is, this kind of mindfulness technique can have a profound impact on your state of health and start you off towards a more in-depth meditation practice. So mindfulness practice can also be a gratitude practice. You'll recall I mentioned being grateful within the context of mindfulness. And with everything going on around us, it's really easy to get sucked up into the negative and really lose track of the positive in our lives. And when you sense this happening, 5-minute gratitude practice is definitely in order. So let's just do this right now. I just want you to use your breath to anchor yourself to the present moment. So you just want to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Close your eyes if you're so inclined. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And just picture something in your mind that you're grateful for. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a color that you love, or a movement of your body that you find particularly satisfying, a pet, a child, whatever image comes to mind. Feel the gratefulness for having those experiences, or that child, or that inspiration. And then once you have that anchored, shift your senses to scent and smell again what's around you. What can you pick up on? What aroma is pleasant? And then tune into sound. What do you hear? What can you feel? Maybe shoes on your feet, fabric against your shoulder, the surface of the table in front of you. And then just be grateful for being able to sense those things. How lucky are you to be here at this moment to just experience the world? And then come back to the room. We can always keep small gratitude journals. It helps reinforce this kind of practice. Just jotting down what you're most grateful for in the day is a mindful practice. It usually doesn't take very long. Sometimes it can take a bit of practice to learn to see the things that you actually appreciate. would typically give kind of canned ham answers to those things, like I'm appreciative of, for my health or my husband or my child. But there's so many small details that we completely miss, the beauty in the world. And that if you get in the habit of noting it down in the day, it is a beginner meditation practice, no doubt. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is another technique we can use meditatively called mantra. So the word mantra can be broken down into two parts: man, which means mind, and tra, which means transport or vehicle. In other words, a mantra is an instrument of the mind, a sound or a vibration that you can use to enter a state of meditation. Now, mantras have been around for about 3,000 years. Many are practiced in Sanskrit. That's considered by some to be a perfect language because its correct pronunciation is believed to evoke true vibration, both in oneself and outside of oneself into the universe, that helps to place in motion whatever you're trying to manifest. Now, that might be true or not, but in my experience, using mantra can be exceptionally useful, especially in somebody who has a tendency towards monkey mind. So some of the more common Sanskrit mantra examples, and you might have heard many of these, some are the sounds of Om. So Om is the Hindu mantra for the root sound of the universe. That's how it's described in the written Hindu religious texts. People might also have heard of Om Mani Padme Hum. That's a Sanskrit mantra that's used to develop compassion for oneself and others, allowing you to see clearly. There's also Ang Namo Guru Deva Namo, and that's I call upon the divine wisdom and bow to this wisdom. But a mantra can really be any carefully chosen praise or a prayer, a biblical verse, anything that has meaning to the person using it. It does not have to be in Sanskrit, can be in English. And actually, there was a study that was published in the American Journal of Psychiatry, and it was really the first randomized controlled trial of individually delivered mantra therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder in a group of veterans. And the researchers found that veterans using mantra repetition therapy had significantly greater improvements in PTSD symptom severity and insomnia. And 59% actually no longer met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder after 2 months, compared to 40% of veterans that received another differently focused therapy. So, and all they did was chant mantras. Now, you can individualize a mantra. They can be short and simple, or a little longer or more detailed. They can be changed as you need. A few examples in English could be just, I am enough. I'm grateful for all that's unfolding in my life and all that's yet to come. I deserve to be loved. I'm attracting all that I dream of and deserve. For some people, it would be just keep moving. But to use a mantra, all you do is you select your phase that resonates with you. And mostly with eyes closed, you can repeat the mantra either silently in your mind or aloud, as long as you're very focused on feeling into the words. So traditionally, a Sanskrit mantra is repeated 108 times. This is once for every beat on a mala chain. I don't know if you've seen a mala chain. They're the long chains that have the beads on it. You can also use a rosary, which actually has usually 54 beads, which is a half a mala. And sometimes people will have a half mala and count it twice. On a rosary, you use a rosary for Hail Marys plus other beads for additional prayers. But you can also just use a mala as a counter. I personally repeat mantras in the car when I'm traveling, or sometimes I'll just listen to recordings of them, especially if I'm on an airplane. I just find that, airplane experiences are so jarring anyways that kind of just sitting and listening to mantras for a while until I calm down or fall asleep or decide to do something else works really well. And 108 repetitions sounds like a lot, but actually it usually takes only about 10 minutes for an average mantra. And again, this is an easy, short practice, very focused, and easy to achieve for most people. Because of the repetition, I think it makes it easier than silence. Like I said, for beginners, silence is very difficult, and then you just start to struggle against lots of things, including the other things in your environment. So maybe you can select a mantra and give that a whirl. Now, part of being present and practicing meditation effectively also means being able to let go of negative thoughts. And like I was just saying, it's a task easier said than done. So you can have all sorts of interfering things that interfere with focusing practices. And there's actually 5 classical hindrances to practice. And these are the classical expressions of how they're described. The first is grasping. So wanting more or wanting something different than what's in your present right now. Who really lives in the present? Not very many of us, but in a meditation practice, it's a great reminder that what we're actually attempting to do is come into the center, into the present. The second is aversions. So things like fear, anger, any form of pushing things away. So you're mad and you're trying to meditate, but an intrusive, angry thought keeps coming in about something that's happened to you. The third is restlessness. So where people have that jumpy energy and agitation where you can't sit still or having difficulty sit still. The fourth is, it's called in Buddhism sloth and torpor, which I think might be overkill in the statement, but maybe not. It's sleeping. It's like that sinking state of mind and body where you just can't keep awake or you can't keep focused. And last but not least, doubt. And the doubt is the mind trap that says, this is not useful. It's never going to work for me. Maybe I can Google it. Maybe there's an easier way. All of those kinds of states. So here's a few options to clear out these kind of hindrances. So if you're grasping before you meditate, so wanting something other than what's right now, just purge out onto paper the train of thoughts running through your mind. Sometimes if you can do this like once at the beginning of a week of meditation practice and just barf out what it is that's going on, it can be a really useful exercise for becoming more mindful of what issues in your life you actually have to deal with and help you to identify what to address in your life. If you barf it down on paper and you're clear, you can get clear about what you want. It really helps settle your mind. Maybe it only settles it for 20 minutes, but that's okay. You've barfed it out and you can reorganize it and kind of revisit it every week. I always find that kind of process, if you do have a lot of things running in your mind, can really help you organize because you can take some actions, not just the antithesis of action, right? We don't want to use meditation as an antithesis to handling your life. We just want to create some space, to create a peaceful place. If you do have the aversion or restlessness, lots of stressful things going on in life, use the mental field technique. It's a fabulous way to kind of just calm down and redress what needs to be processed. So if there's an anger that's coming up, hold the emotion of that anger and go through that tapping process. If you're really feeling sleepy in meditation, a lot of the time you actually are needing more sleep than you're getting, or you're meditating in a time that really doesn't work for you. If you just feel like really heavy, some people that find that doing meditation after exercising can really help create a more clear meditation. So because we have so much stress in our culture, running the stress off can calm the fight or flight response that we work ourselves into over the day and can energize us when we've just had too much focus on the mental over a day. And then you wouldn't have trouble usually to sit down and meditate for 10, 15 minutes. And as for doubt, I think this is the constant internal struggle for all of us, isn't it? So a meditation practice really works best if you can commit to a certain length of time. I think an ideal time to commit to meditative practice as a beginner, even if you're only doing 5-10 minutes a day, is for 40 days. And, there's some great apps that you can get. There actually is an app called 40 Days that you can, I'm pretty sure it's free. You just download it to your phone. And it actually reminds you gently every day where you are in your 40-day practice. So that might be really useful for those of us who tend to be in the self-doubt. Another way we can prepare for meditation is, again, to use the breath, as we've spoken about before. You can create some breath, and we're going to talk about actual breath processes in just a minute here. So other tools for better meditation. Classically, meditation takes place in a seated position, wherever you're comfortable. You don't have to sit with your legs in lotus position. This is the position like we're seeing here on the slide where your legs are folded. Actually, lotus position is where your feet are actually on top of your thighs, and the feet are turned upwards. Some people just can't physically do that at this juncture. But it is actually interesting to know, it is a recommended position for body energetics in meditation. It's one of the 84 asanas or body positions in yoga. So you can also do a half lotus like this guy's doing or be cross-legged. In order to do lotus positions, most people will need a small cushion to elevate their pelvises so that the legs come down a bit in the front. So a meditation cushion kind of looks like a little circular cushion, and it's usually a good 6 inches, probably, maybe a touch more or a touch less, depending on the cushion. In height, it's small. You just tuck it under your pelvis, and then your legs can kind of fall down naturally, and it usually helps you straighten the spine and yet still maintain a lotus position. It's also totally appropriate to sit in a chair, with your feet planted on the ground and your hands resting palm up in the lap. Hand positions are particular in yogic meditation. So the classic upturned palms with the index finger and the thumb touching is the Gaul mudra or hand position. A mudra is a hand position. It's used to keep a calm mind in the seeking of knowledge. You can also rest the back of the right hand in the palm of the left with your thumbs touching. That's the Dhyana mudra, and its purpose is to bring you into deeper and more profound concentration. And if you've ever seen pictures of like the Buddha or pictures of people meditating, you'll often see some of those hand positions. What's fascinating to me is in stock photography, I saw some very bad looking meditation positions. One of the most popular for pictures was actually having people with their fingers in the classic Gaul mudra, but like with their arms up in the air. And no, people don't meditate with their arms up in the air like that. It totally would be uncomfortable. The point is that you are comfortable, your arms are resting gently on your lap, your legs are in whatever position feel most comfortable to you. Sitting up straight is very helpful. Just picturing a thread pulling up from the center of your head, straightening the spine. This really helps you to breathe deeply and fully. And so these are all things, but honestly, you can sit with your hands in your lap. You can sit with your hands in prayer position. Whatever works for you is fine. As you get more advanced with meditation, people do notice subtle differences in the body energetics with different positions. In the very beginning, you might not be so concerned about that, but if you don't mind sitting in a position like that, it will often help because, the body memory, the kinesthetic memory of sitting in meditation that way, when you repeat it actually almost signals to the body that that's what you're about to do, and that kinesthetic memory can also help you out. Now, darkness also always helps meditation. So particularly where there's a real desire to kind of really come within yourself, especially with higher level meditations, darkness or a mask or a room that is very, very low light is much preferential. A sleep mask will work perfectly. Even if you want to meditate in the morning, if you're strongly visual and you tend to find yourself opening your eyes, it really helps your concentration to have a little sleep mask on. Alternatively, if you are visual, you can also use a candle or an oil lamp to focus your eyes on something while you're meditating. Just think of the state, most people achieve around a campfire. You just kind of like gaze into the flames. People will go totally silent for windows of time because that focus on the flame becomes so ensnaring to your visual system. Having quiet is really useful. If that's not possible, you can use music in the background. And if you have background music, you can find a lot of tracks that are designed for relaxation or for meditation, and that can help you keep you in a relaxed state. It can also be really useful if you use music as a meditation timer, because sometimes you don't want to constantly be checking the clock. You have 15 minutes for meditation, and how are you going to time that? You can actually buy beautiful bowl ringing meditation timers that can help keep you on track, or you can use a digital timer, although those tend to be a little bit more jarring. But you can also find ones online or for your phone that make really nice rings that don't jar you too much but serve as a timer. I think that meditating in a group can really support a meditation practice. Being connected to others in practice has a very definite resonance signature. And most people will have the experience of having more profound meditations when they're collectively in the same room with each other. And that's because of brainwave entrainment. Anybody who is in the room with you, agitating or calming, you will often entrain to the strongest signal. And if the strongest signal that everybody's concentrating and doing the same thing in a relaxed meditation, your body will follow along. And so it can make a beginner meditation much more profound when you have the opportunity to do it in group experience. And as for Neil's just asking if time affects the effectiveness of meditation. Again, I think it depends on a number of different things. It depends on why you're meditating. If you're meditating for something that's active in your body awareness at a certain time, like between 2 and 4 a.m. is usually like liver rejuvenation time. If you're dealing with a lot of, angers and frustrations, that might actually have an impact. But I think in general, you just want to meditate at whatever time, A, that you have, and B, that you feel most able to do a practice for whatever length of time you've decided to do it. Now, let's talk about the importance of the breath next. So meditation practices often start with awareness of the breath, and that is part of mindfulness of the body. So it's kind of like a built-in measure that by itself, being aware of the breath helps to create a focus, and that helps guide meditative practice. In recent years, though, I think the profound impact of this has become much more apparent. And patients of mine might know that in my practice, I often teach people heart math techniques. So heart math is a particular technique which is focused on creating optimal heart rate variability. So heart rate variability, we're just going to shorten it to HRV because that's a bit of a tongue twister, is a measure of the acceleration and deceleration of the heart rate. So the healthiest HRV is where the heart rate increases and decreases in a smooth sine wave pattern. So the more healthy your HRV, the better your health outcomes are on pretty much any measure you can make. For example, HRV is more predictive of complications from diabetes than blood sugar levels are. It's so useful for prediction of health that it's become a major research variable in all types of health studies. So breathing is, of course, something we can control and regulate. And it turns out that when we control our breathing in a certain way and we induce that perfect sine wave rhythm, we induce that heart rate variability that's the most beautiful and the most healthy. And you can literally retrain your body to have better heart rate variability through this as a meditative practice. So let's just try this right now. This is the quick guide to doing this. So close your eyes again, and again, just get comfortable wherever you are. You can even do this if you're doing a task. And what you want to do is breathe 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Ideally at 5, it can be a little bit shorter, a little bit longer if you need. We're just going to repeat until you get a pace that feels comfortable. So breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just continue in that rhythm. In, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then once you have the rhythm, just keep breathing in that rhythm. Become aware of your heart space. So sometimes just touch your chest, touch the center of your chest. It's very useful to keep your awareness here if you have trouble doing this with your mind. Keep your breathing rhythm. while you're centering your awareness in the center of your chest. And then bring in thoughts of something or someone you love or value or appreciate right into your heart, right underneath your fingers. You usually just want to stay here for a few minutes, centered in the heart, keeping your breathing in the same rhythm. Now just gently come back out of it. And open your eyes. So usually within a handful of minutes of teaching somebody to breathe in that style and be aware of the center of the chest and bringing something that they appreciate, using digital monitors, we can see that people quickly come into sine wave rhythm of that acceleration and deceleration of the heart rate. It goes from being a jagged, stressful looking mess to a very nice, gentle, positive rhythm. And it takes literally minutes. This particular technique, I can't teach you all the rest of what's possible with this technique. Obviously, we have a short webinar to do, but there's very amazing deepened inner visioning that's possible with it. And in my own personal practices, I've often used heart math techniques and the associated breathing rhythms to solve problems, to decrease stress, and it's very quick. Catherine was asking me a question before the webinar started about how to keep, centered and focused on what she was doing in the day. And taking 5 minutes to do this once an hour, like at the top of the hour, will really change profoundly how centered you are. And it's such a simple technique that you can almost dismiss it. But I can tell you that, like I said, it's so clear if we hook somebody up to the digital computer monitor where you can see it happening on the screen in front of you. It's absolutely amazing. And I found it extremely useful practice, especially if you don't feel a resonance with a mantra or you don't want to do, silence meditations. This is another really nice one, more physically based, so the people who are a bit more kinesthetic can really identify with this usually. But across the board, I've never seen anybody who can't do that and can't create that beautiful rhythm, that healthy rhythm within a few minutes of doing that. So even if that's all you do, that would be very positive. Now, sitting still for people is not, it's not for everyone. So it's important to acknowledge that. For those of you who are kind of fidgety or shaky or just generally don't enjoy sitting, you could try a walking meditation instead. And so walking meditations are basically exactly what it sounds like. You walk around, but you deliberately are thinking or being mindful about the way that you do the series of actions that you usually do without thinking. So like we do that with eating, you can do this with physical movement. And as you walk, you basically notice, the lifting of one foot, the moving of the foot forward from where you're standing, the placing of your foot on the ground, heel first, shifting the weight, and then moving to the next step. Of course, you're going to want to focus the attention on your speed a little bit, so slow it down, see where your arms fall or move, and also where your mind wanders, and then just bring your attention back to what you see in front of you. In terms of your feet, lots of people will just stare at their feet when they do this kind of walking meditation. Now, technically you can do a walking meditation anywhere. It's ideally much slower than walking pace. So probably not just going to walk down the street like this particular lady. Maybe there's nobody else on the street. She should probably get away with it. But what you can do, I've shown an example here of a walking labyrinth. And this is the one that's actually found in the Chartres Cathedral in France. It's a single track pathway from start to finish. And these type of paths can be used with meditative walking or with a mantra repetition. If you live in Calgary, there are actually about 15 labyrinths available to you in various public spaces, including in hospitals and churches. The closest one to me is in Silver Springs. It's the Chart replica etched in time. So it's a nice sensory experience as well. If you've never been up to the Silver Springs, it's like a botanical garden up against the concrete fence beside Crowchild. And one of the little garden rooms that they have there has this beautiful labyrinth. There's also one on Nose Hill on the 14th Street exit. There is one in Knox United. There's a bunch of different churches actually that have accessible public labyrinths. I will send you a link actually that has the list of labyrinths in the city. And chances are good that you know, a lot of my patients are in the Northwest, so hopefully you'll find one that's close to you. But it can be a very nice meditative practice. And if you work close to a church or a park that has one, you know, you can do that walking at lunch. So super fun, and also a bit more focused for the kinesthetic person. Now, if you're really kinesthetic also, another method of meditation is by using a body scan. So a body scan can take a variable amount of time, you know, 20 up to 45 minutes, because you can be very precise about it. And you can do that whether you're lying down or sitting or in another posture. And it really just basically involves the time to notice and sense pressure and tightness, the sensations in every part of your body from your toes to the crown of your head. And so this is actually pretty easy to do because most people, you know, have a relatively good sense of all their body parts. And so you could just begin by just bringing your attention into your body. You can close your eyes. And, you know, if you're just sitting there right now, you can just notice your body seated, wherever you're seated. You can feel the weight of your body on the chair and on the floor. You can take a deep breath in, and if you feel that it's a bit tight, you know, you take a deep breath, you bring in more oxygen, enliven the tissue, and as you exhale, you just have the sense of relaxing more deeply. You can notice your feet on the floor. You can notice the sensation of your feet touching, the weight, the pressure, the vibration maybe in the floor, the heat. You can notice your legs against the chair. You can notice your back against the chair. You can basically walk yourself all the way up through your body with each awareness of a body part, taking deep breath into that body part. And then as you let go, just relax that body part more. And then when you feel like you have it relaxed, you move to the next. So you got to make sure that you're taking deep breaths the whole time, just allowing every part of yourself to soften. And the goal is to really reach relaxation. But because you are doing this body scan with mindful awareness of a body part, you will have the same beneficial effect on the areas of the brain that we talked about before, because this is very strongly anchored into your sensation. And again, you know, you can make this body scan substantially more meditative with other inner visioning techniques, which we're not going to be able to talk about here right now, but just so that you're aware, you know, they seem like beginner techniques, but true mastery of the simple in meditation makes a profound difference over the long run. When I first retried Vipassana meditation after many years of doing other techniques, I actually found it quite easy. And it can be frustrating to the beginner to not be able to do that, because it's a very specific state of mind, and it can be a profound state of mind, a profound inner experience to have that. But even if that isn't your goal, just being mindful can create huge changes. So making meditation a daily habit, as we've discussed, you can tailor your meditation to whatever you want it to be and whatever works for you and your schedule. You know, for some people, morning meditation is best. For some, a nighttime routine can really help lull them to sleep. Others find solace in meditating several times throughout the day, or do it in different ways. The most important part is just making the time. So, like I said, maybe set some reminders on your phone. Don't let yourself make an excuse. Even if you do 5 minutes for a better version of you to take on the day, I'm sure you have time for that. So make it a goal to try and repeat your practice where you can for 40 days. Now, in order to kind of start you off on the right foot, I'm actually going to suggest two possibilities here for everybody. The first is that you can actually register for a free 2-week mindfulness challenge, which is going to start in about 2 weeks and go for 14 days. And then hopefully you can kind of carry it on from there in whatever way, shape, or form works. So we're going to do this by private Facebook group. So it's a closed group where we can do some challenges together. And I can email you the sign up site. You don't have to do it right this moment, but when I put together the replay reminder, I will send you a link towards that. And, hopefully it'll give you the opportunity to start to develop those skills in mindfulness, especially if you just need a little bit of a kick in the pants. Doing it together can be really useful. And then secondly, we're going to be offering a more in-depth course that's called Revive Meditation starting in September. And what we're going to do in that is really spend a great deal more time leading you through in-depth explorations of meditation. We will have planned 6 sessions, and we're going to go through this in much more detail. So going through like the explanation and kind of lecture part of a meditative technique, and then do a group meditation using that technique, and then having all the resources and materials for future reference. So you can practice in between our sessions together and then help build a practice that's really suited to you. So like I said, we'll put the links in our replay email shortly. Now, we covered a lot here today. I mean, I'm hoping that you can just pick out some simple things to start with. You can probably feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I'm quite sure that it's just what you need to get started. And I'm hoping you'll join me on the mindfulness challenge and then maybe even the in-depth course if you're really interested in this. So here are the next events in this series. I know lots of people have already pre-registered for this. You can register in advance online at wholelifemedicine.com. That's our resource site. So our next webinar is actually going to be about functional medicine. Lots of people have asked me about functional medicine, and yes, I know about functional medicine. I've known about it for my entire naturopathic career, and we're going to have some great times talking about it, I think, in August. We're also in September going to do art of meal prep, because I think that's a huge challenge area for most people health-wise. And then we're going to start looking at thyroid conditions in October. Also during October, we're going to do an Align event. So that's going to be an in-person event where we're just going to have more time together to learn and experiment and practice some new and novel skills in person. So sometimes there's great resources that we just don't have time to teach patients in clinic. And so we're going to gather a bunch of those and have a great group experience and hopefully connect some of my community members to each other, because all of you are awesome. And I think you'd be amazed if I could manage to get like all 5,000 of you into one location. I think you just find so many, kindred spirits amongst yourselves. I know that I enjoy pretty much every single interaction I have with every one of you, and I think most people in my practice are really on the same page. So hopefully we're going to start building that community a little bit more with live events. So these ones on the right are just helping Dr. Mom. If you're a parent of young children, we're also doing some how to raise your children without, getting too stressed out kind of webinars. But if you have also relatives or friends, they're totally welcome to come participate in those. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join me. I absolutely love sharing some of this with you, and I hope you learned something new and valuable. And I just want to say again, how proud I am of each of you for taking the steps towards a meditative practice. As always, feedback's totally appreciated on our free webinar sessions. If you found any of our series useful, I'd love to hear about it, as well as suggestions for what else you might like to hear about. And a reminder that you can email questions to me either at the info@resonance-wellness address that goes to Victoria, or you can also post it on our Facebook page, and I'll try to answer them so that everybody can see the answer. So love you guys. Thank you so much. I will hopefully talk to you soon, and I hopefully will see you on the 14-day challenge that will hopefully turn into a 40-day. Take care of yourselves. Good night. Thanks for watching. I love to connect with my patient community to inform and inspire, and I hope you'll join us again in the near future. See you soon.